Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Today, I'll be reading from a subreddit. These are the top 3 most creepy flatmates or apartment horror stories. So let's jump right into it. The house was huge and beautiful. At first, we thought it was the cat, but then we started hearing what sounded like hissing. This happened many years ago when I was a young single guy living in a 1-bedroom apartment. My building was old, and the walls were paper thin. I opened it, and there stood my neighbor and her husband. They were screaming at me, demanding to know who wrote the note. I told them I did. I was a 22-year-old female living in a basement apartment. It was the first apartment I'd ever had. The apartment was in this old converted house, and I was sharing the main floor with another couple. The couple shared the bathroom with me, and there was a separate entrance to our apartments. The apartment was run down but cheap. I hope that you enjoyed that creepypasta story. And if you did, make sure to leave a like and subscribe so you don't miss any of my videos. Also, I have a podcast. And if you want to check it out, you can search for it wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks so much for listening and have a good night. Bye. It was $400 per month. We had roaches and spiders. The windows wouldn't lock. The appliances were awful, and the water would sometimes turn brown. But I loved my apartment. It was mine. Her husband then pushed past me into my apartment and started tearing it apart, looking for the note. He ripped the note in half and said, "I always paid my rent on time, sometimes early." I handed him the check, and he looked at it, then at me, then back at the check. He says, "So this isn't the check for this month, is it?" I was confused. "It's for this month." "Why?" "Because I haven't received it yet," he said. "Oh," I said, and that's when he lunged at me. We fought, and I managed to get away. I sprinted to my apartment. I didn't hear from him for 2 weeks. Then he sent me a text saying that my rent was due. I replied that I'd pay it the next day. He texted back, "No, I want it now." I went to his apartment and gave him the check. He looked at it and said, "This isn't the check for this month, is it?" I was confused again. "It's for this month." "Why?" "Because I haven't received it yet," he said. And he lunged at me again. I fought him off and told him that I was going to tell the cops that he tried to assault me. He said, "Then you won't pay your rent and you'll be evicted." So I didn't pay him for the rest of the 6 months that I lived there. He didn't try anything else with me, and I didn't hear from him until I moved out. I eventually found a lawyer who helped me sue him for the return of my security deposit. I won, but I had to pay court costs. I guess I was just busy that week, and he hadn't received his money by Sunday. I received an angry text message saying that I had to pay up or I'd be evicted. I replied that I would be there soon. I threw some stuff in my purse, grabbed the money, and headed to his apartment. You think you're funny, huh? You wait till I get you. I shut the door and locked it. The pounding started again. "Let me in. Let me in. I'm going to kill you," he screamed. I called the cops. They came out quickly because I'd called them before about the noise. They arrested the guy and took him away. I felt sorry for the woman. I could tell she was embarrassed, and I knew it must have been hard for her to admit that her husband was a nut job. You could hear everything. Living in this apartment was cheap, so I had a lot of musician friends over all the time. We would jam and play music. If you've ever played music, you know how loud things can get. Well, one day I came home and found a note under my door. I opened it, and it was from my neighbor. She said she was writing because the noise was so loud the night before that her TV started to shake and she couldn't watch Star Trek. Could I please keep it down? Fine. I apologized profusely and promised it would never happen again. Then we started seeing scales on the floor. Another note. But this time, it was a little more rude. I spoke to my neighbor and again apologized. But as time went on, I continued to get these notes, more and more frequent. After the 4th or 5th note, I had enough. I wrote a response saying, "Listen, lady, if you have a problem with the noise, why don't you come over and we can talk about it like adults?" I put the note under her door and went to bed. We all screamed at the top of our lungs and ran out of the house. When we came back in with a baseball bat, we saw the biggest snake I have ever seen slithering across the floor. We have since moved out. That's weird. Why would she apologize if they moved out? I shrugged it off, thinking maybe they didn't move far, and that's why she was apologizing. One evening I was home alone playing guitar when I heard pounding on the door again. I opened it to see the same couple standing there. "Can I help you?" I asked. "We're back," the woman said, "and we're your new landlords." What? I had no idea. I lived in that apartment for almost 2 more years. Every time I talked to them, I could tell they were both a little unhinged. Their son, who was about 8, would come over every once in a while, and he was a little weird too. One time he asked me if I liked bugs, and then he showed me a can full of cockroaches he had collected from outside. I politely told him that I didn't like bugs and that I preferred not to see them. He looked at me funny and went back to collecting his bugs. One day I was playing guitar when I heard pounding on the door. I opened it to see the landlord. "Your rent is due today?" he said. "I don't pay until the 1st of the month," I replied. "I know, but we need the money now. In fact, why don't you just move out right now?" "What?" I was confused. "You want me to move out now? I have stuff here, and I'm supposed to be here another year. You can leave all your stuff. I'm calling the cops to have you evicted right now," he said. I laughed and closed the door. I didn't think they would actually do this. Well, they did. The cops came and dragged me out of my apartment. I sued them to get my security deposit back. The case went on for months, and I eventually won. I'm still not sure what their game was. I wonder if they thought they could force me to sell them my apartment. One of our number called Animal Control, who said they'd come out to collect it. However, they didn't turn up for 3 days, and the house had no heating. So we had to take care of it until then. We ended up keeping the snake in the bathroom, heating it up with hot water bottles, and feeding it mice that we bought from a pet shop. Eventually, Animal Control came and took it away, and we all moved in. We were all really excited. On moving day, we began moving in our stuff when one of the potential housemates pulled out a giant duffel bag. He said this is where he kept his pet snake, and that he wanted to keep it in the living room. We all pretty much told him that was insane, and that if he brought it in, we would all freak out and refuse to move in. He dropped it and said it was just a rubber snake. We all decided to give him the benefit of the doubt. He unpacked his stuff, and we carried on with unpacking ours. Story No. 1. My nightmare housemate. It was about 10 years ago that I moved into a house with 5 other students. About an hour later, we heard some movement in the living room. The next day, we asked the guy where the snake had come from, and he told us that he got it from a friend, and that it was a corn snake, which can grow up to 6 feet. And we all decided to confront him, telling him that he'd put us in danger, and that we wanted him to move out. He replied by saying that we had signed a lease, and that he wasn't going anywhere. He also said that if we didn't want to live with the snake, then we could leave, and he would rent the house by himself. So we looked through the lease. It turned out that if you paid your share of the deposit and the first month's rent, then you could get out of the contract penalty-free. So we all clubbed together and paid his share. Of course, he was furious, but there was nothing he could do. As soon as he'd moved out, we put a big sign on the front lawn saying, "Beware, Snake House." That house has been empty for over 10 years now. I'm still friends with the people I lived with, and we often wonder what happened to that snake. Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure it's doing well. Probably got a family, living under a rock somewhere. Story No. 2. Apartment with a stalker neighbor. Well, 2 weeks later, it happened again. About an hour later, I heard pounding on my door. A few days later, I came home to find another note. It read, "I'm sorry about my husband. Please forgive us." Story No. 3. Landlord demands sex for rent. This happened in Nashville, Tennessee. Well, one day I received an email from the landlord saying that my rent was due. I replied that I'd pay it that weekend. When I got to his apartment, I knocked and he opened the door. Yeah, I don't even know what to say to that. That was crazy.